To me, at least the way that when I teach it, all type of knowledge ultimately means self-knowledge.
Welcome to Top 10 Beyond the Screen. I'm your host, Johnny Rogers, and in today's video, we'll be breaking down all of the best moments that Bruce Lee had throughout his movie career. Bruce Lee was renowned for his martial arts prowess and truly helped popularize martial arts movies in the 1970s. But before we get into that, if you don't want to miss another daily video from us, make sure you tap that subscribe button to join our notification squad. Now, with any further delay, let's get right into today's list of the top 10 greatest Bruce Lee moments. In at number 10, Game of Death. For the many, the film Game of Death is a bittersweet watch for Bruce Lee fans. In the film, Bruce Lee filmed an astonishing 30 minutes of fight scenes, all while in a yellow jumpsuit. Unfortunately, he only filmed a total of 40 minutes before his untimely death. 5 years after Lee had passed away, Golden Harvest Studios decided to pull up the footage, cut it down, and stick on an ending that just left people very displeased with the final project. Although even in those final movie moments, Bruce absolutely delivered, which makes it all worth it. One of the incredible fight scenes that he recorded was with the giant 7'2" Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. With that much of a height difference, it was truly a David versus Goliath moment that proved no matter how big you were, Bruce Lee could take you down. In at number 9, An Orphan's Tragedy. This film is a big-time essential watch for everyone that wants to truly see the growth of Bruce Lee's acting abilities. In An Orphan's Tragedy, Bruce is only 15 years old, but he plays a happy orphan that finds comfort in his country life. Although his world is then flipped upside down when his biological father escapes prison and comes back for him. The film is a 1955 Hong Kong drama that is loosely based on the Charles Dickens novel from 1861 called Great Expectations. Perhaps the best moment of the film was when we got to see Bruce Lee doing a different type of acting than what we expect based on his very popular kung fu movies. There's a scene where Bruce is trapped in a shack now with this desperate and violent man. Due to Bruce being so young, we get to see him try and act like he's, well, weak.
佢會周圍揾我㗎。你阿爺？你爺喺邊度啊？喺底下條村啊。佢做咩㗎？
In at number 8, The Green Hornet. The Green Hornet was an American television series that aired on ABC in 1966 to 1967. At its core was Van Williams as the Green Hornet and Bruce Lee as his trusty sidekick Kato. Although the show never did get enough attention to stay on the air longer than a single season, it is still widely regarded as a favorite for Bruce Lee fans. In China, it's simply referred to as the Kato Show because of how iconic he was there. Although the show didn't really allow for those great extended fight scenes, it still had its moments. Before that fight scene with Kato, he and the Green Hornet were attempting to do a hostage exchange that went horribly wrong and led to them being ambushed. While the narrative of the show wasn't the strongest, it was still cool getting to see Bruce Lee be a superhero and still make use of his martial arts. In at number 7, Marlowe. Bruce Lee's first Hollywood cameo was actually a gift from his Oscar-winning kung fu student Sterling Silliphant. Sterling had come up with the character of the mob enforcer called Winslow Wong for his mentor to play. Throughout the film, you can tell that Bruce Lee is a little bit nervous and especially aware of his accent while he's exchanging quick dialogue with James Garner's Marlowe. Although the best moment by far for him in this film is when he gets to just absolutely demolish Marlowe's office. And he does it with the grace of a ballet dancer and the intention to destroy like a wrecking ball. The problem with the film was that the critics simply panned over it because at times it felt like the plot was kind of lacking, and in one very funny scene, Marlowe himself even looks like he doesn't know what's going on. Perhaps the only memorable scene was Bruce Lee kicking that office into submission. In at number 6, The Kid. In his first ever starring role with his fourth film, Lee played a tough street kid with a heart of gold once again. In this film, Bruce Lee is only 10 years old, yet manages to show off a range of emotions and raw charisma. In one scene, he begins to imitate his teacher, and then in another scene, he puffs himself up with a cocky bravado by throwing his shoulders back and thumbing his nose at an opponent. Opposite moments of emotion like that show just how he could be humorous, but still let you know how tough he was. The puffing of his chest actually ended up becoming one of his signature moves as an adult actor. The movie was a box office hit, and a sequel was actually planned that would have turned Bruce into, well, the top child actor in Hong Kong. Although his father refused to let him repeat the role because in real life, Bruce was causing a lot of trouble at school and always getting himself into fights just on the street, randomly. And because of this, his parents told him that he couldn't act anymore until his behavior improved. The funny thing is that his behavior never really improved, and they ended up just letting him start acting again. In at number 5, Fist of Fury. The second film that Bruce Lee signed with his contract at Golden Harvest Studios was his only period piece. He plays Shen Zhen, the student of a famous kung fu master in 1930s colonial Shanghai. When Shen Zhen discovers his master was killed by the Japanese, he unleashes his furious fists. The movie was made to overtly show a sign of patriotism for the Chinese people, and that was so well enforced that when Lee's character strutted into the Japanese dojo and declared, "The Chinese are not the sick men of Asia," it was reported that many Chinese fans ripped up their seat cushions and threw them around the theater in joy. Interestingly enough, Bruce Lee was a huge fan of Japanese films, and he actually approached this role in particular with the exaggerated emotional style of Japanese samurai movies. It didn't quite work, but his fight scene choreography was so riveting that it didn't really matter. In at number 4, The Big Boss. For someone that was as worldly as Bruce Lee was, he definitely had a fondness for playing characters that were more on the naive side. In his very first Golden Harvest film, his character immigrates to Thailand in order to work in an ice factory. It turns out that the ice factory is actually a front for a drug smuggling operation. And when speaking about what his character was like in this film, Lee said that he was a very simple and straightforward guy. If you told him something, he would believe you. Although if he ever figures out that he's been fooled, he's gonna go ballistic. This stark contrast not only made for great levels to his acting, but it also allowed him to do some crazy things that felt justified to the audience. The scene where he fights everyone in the ice factory is like nothing else. I mean, he tears through his enemies with glee in what is definitely his most primal performance ever.
So what? You're headed for the freezer.
In at number 3, The Way of the Dragon. The Way of the Dragon was not only a great film, but it was also Bruce Lee's directorial debut. The film was actually called Way of the Dragon, that's why I put it as the title, but when it aired in America, they actually changed the name to Return of the Dragon. I say that because people often confuse them for being two separate movies. The film was a comedic kung fu flick that centered around Lee flying to Italy to serve up some serious justice. After a group of Chinese immigrants open a restaurant in Rome, a local gangster wants to run them out of business. So instead of Bruce Lee enjoying his time in Italy and learning the Italian way of life, he becomes preoccupied defending this restaurant and beating up bad guys in back alleys. There was also great moments of him fighting off a mobster with a gun and flexing his bow staff skills while doing so, but perhaps the best moment would be what I consider the final boss of the film. After the Mafia has all of their best men defeated by Bruce, single-handedly I might add, they send in the only person they feel that can defeat him, Chuck Norris. In at number 2, The Orphan. Lee was never fully comfortable on screen unless he was the star, and he had been waiting 10 years since The Kid for a true leading role. Let's not forget that he had been on show business timeout for a while, so it makes sense that his only desire was to be back in that leading role. Modeling his troubled teenage character on James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause, Lee gave his most emotionally complex performance ever. One moment he is snarling, the next laughing maniacally, and all while doing so in a Cantonese street slang. Hong Kong boys were so enamored with Lee's character that they began to emulate even how he smoked cigarettes and did the cha-cha dance. The film had such an influence on the youth in Hong Kong that one high school principal even had to hang a banner that read, "No one is allowed to imitate Bruce Lee's asham in The Orphan." And just check out Bruce Lee's cha-cha dance. Let's just go to that clip. Last but certainly not least, on our number 1 spot, Enter the Dragon. Enter the Dragon was sort of this James Bond type knockoff, but it's actually what helped launch Bruce Lee into superstardom. It was especially memorable because Bruce Lee didn't only have to fight on screen, but off screen as well. He was terrified that Warner Brothers was going to recast the film with John Saxon as the star, so Lee fought his hardest to make sure every scene had his personality stamped into it. With the film being released a month following his death, Enter the Dragon marked one of his final efforts to bring Kung Fu to the West, and it worked. After this movie, 1,000 different people tried to imitate it, but none could cast anyone that delivered like Bruce Lee did. His performance in this film was so intense that he practically vibrated off the screen. The movie is just 2 hours of Bruce Lee punching and kicking through anyone standing in his way. Following the film, there was a huge spike in Western parents taking their kids to martial arts schools, and from there, Bruce Lee's legacy in film and beyond was pretty much cemented in history. And that has been the top 10 greatest Bruce Lee moments. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to our editors for all of your hard work. If you enjoyed this video, then please show us some love here by tapping that like and subscribe button. Plus, don't forget to leave us your comments down below with your thoughts on today's list. And for more videos like this one, all you gotta do is tap that playlist when it pops up. From Top 10 Beyond the Screen, my name is Johnny Rogers, saying until next time, stay classy.